Good day, friends. So today, what I'm going to show you how to do is how to true a buckle on a wheel. Mainly how to true side to side, or what's sometimes called lateral buckle. Honestly, I didn't realize how bad the buckle was on this wheel until I had a decent look at it. There was a tiny little bit of brake rub, and I was like, you know what, I can probably sort that out. It's not too bad, and I can, but it's a bit bigger than I thought it was. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to show you how to true a wheel, or at least how to learn the basics of how to true a wheel. I'm not going to show you the wheel on the bike because camera angles, lighting, it's a bit of a nightmare. I am, however, going to show you in the touring stand. Now, if you don't have a touring stand, and you probably don't have a touring stand, there's a few things you can do. If you want a real cheap version of building a touring stand, you can take a pair of zip ties and you can zip tie them onto here and here. These are the seat stays, chain stays, seat stays. You can zip tie them onto the seat stays and you can use them like feelers to touch the rim. Generally speaking, especially if you've got rim brakes, it's quite difficult to get a really good level of true with just the zip ties because they tend to wobble around. It's not a perfect solution, but if it's all you've got, it's enough to get you home. What you will need, however, is you will need a spoke wrench, spoke key. You will need one of these, and you will need one that fits your spokes, because if you have one that's a lot too big or a lot too small, you will round the nipples. Didn't come up with a name, that's just what they're called, which is these parts. So if you got on a wheel, you obviously have your hub in the middle, you have your spokes, and you have your nipples, which connect the rim to the spoke, and then you have the rim, obviously. I say obviously, it's not obvious if you don't know it. So, let's get to touring. Okay, so we have the wheel in the touring stand. Now, a lot of times, obviously you'll be able to see that a wheel is out of true, but quite often, especially on rim brakes, you'll be able to hear it's out of true before you, because it's rare that people just stand and stare at the wheels, but if you hear a consistent like this, that noise typically means your wheel's out of true. And what we want it to sound like, obviously, is quiet. We don't want any rub between the pads and the rim when we're not braking, because it slows us down and that's less fun. Now, there was a video on the internet that circulated years ago. I think it was some dude somewhere in Southeast Asia or maybe India or something like that, and he trues a wheel by using his forehead. Now, I think I talked to some friends and some people were saying that it looks like it was maybe the video was played in reverse or something, but I'm going to teach you how to true a wheel using your head, but without bashing your head on the wheel. So obviously you're going to need to put it in the touring stand, or my earlier tip with the zip ties, but you will need to put it in a position where you can true it. I call this the lie detector. It's a touring stand, but I call it the lie detector because, well, it's a more fun name. So what you're going to do is, once you've got it on here, you want to deflate the tire pressure. Now, the reason you want to deflate the tire is because if you keep the tire inflated while you're trying to true a wheel, then sometimes the pressure of the tire pressing against the inside of the rim can hold the rim in a artificial position from where it would actually be if there was no tire on it. And you need a true rim without the tire on it. You need to deflate the tire, essentially. Once you have deflated the tire, you can then start honing in on where the high spots are. So the basic process of truing a wheel is you find the high spot, you find it, you isolate it, and then you fix it. So I will show you first by sound, and then I'll try and visually show you. It's a little bit difficult with the camera, and I don't have a movie studio. It is quite dark behind me. It's a bit of a Blair Witch bicycle repair vibe, but we're going with it because I don't have fantastic lighting at the moment, but it is something I am working on at the moment, trying to figure out. So first you find the spot. So this is a really good touring stand because you can kind of just push these in. You do get lots of different touring stands that are, you get some that are cheaper, some that are expensive. This one was actually a birthday present. I would estimate it was somewhere between 30 and 50 quid. You get some that are very expensive, you get some of the Part Tool ones. I have one at my work and it's fucking great, but it's like a £500 touring stand. It's unnecessary for home repairs. However, if you have a bike, you have a couple of bikes, your family have bikes, and you plan on continuing to cycle for years and years to come, then investing in a touring stand is definitely worthwhile. It will pay for itself after you have used it 3 or 4 times, especially if you get a kind of cheap one like this, which is actually really decent in terms of functionality for the price of it. Because a normal, if you go to most places, I don't know what it is in the US, but say somewhere between maybe 15-20 bucks. In the UK, between 12, 15, maybe £20 for a wheel true. If you get one cheap one of these, maybe 50 quid. So you get 2 or 3, use it 2 or 3 times, it's paid for itself in terms of repair. And you can do it yourself, you can do it for friends. It's another skill you can add to your repertoire. So what we do first is spin the wheel. Now it's important, a little caveat as well, obviously make sure the tire is deflated. You have to make sure that the hub isn't loose. So what I mean by that is if you put the wheel in the touring stand obviously, and you go to wobble it, and the hub has got play in it, the hub wobbles, easiest way to tell is if you've got it in the bike and the quick release is on solid or the through axle is on solid, try and move the wheel laterally, left to right. If you get play in the hub and the wheel is still solid in the frame, then obviously you got play in the hub. The reason that's important is that when you put the feelers on the rim, if you go to push in and there's play in the hub, then it can move the wheel, and you're trying to true the hub as opposed to truing the rim. So it's important to check that first. Once you have done that, you then make sure it's obviously secure in the arms of the touring stand. Now we can start. So make sure you've got your appropriately sized spoke wrench. Spin up the wheel. Pick a side, any side, it doesn't really matter. And obviously you have to have this aligned with the rim. You generally align it with kind of the lower edge of the rim. Then what you want to do is you want to push this in. Here the rub. That rub. So that's us found a high spot. Obviously it's the highest point in the rim because this is far away from the rim, relatively speaking. It's a couple of millimeters. Geez, that's actually really far out. It's a couple of millimeters. So you find that first spot. Then what you want to do, so I found a spot, I'm not isolating it. I'm trying to find, so it's here. It's right there. That's one of the spots. So that means that this, because the way you have to think about a wheel is that like it's a suspension. Think about it like a suspension bridge. So if this is your rim, and you have spokes on either side going up to the hub here, if it's moving more to this side, it's because there's generally, you need to add tension to this side to bring it back to the middle. So if I'm stood on this side of the wheel and there's a high spot on this side, on the left hand side, it means I have to find the spoke that's closest to this point, which is this spoke, and I have to find the spoke on the other side to add tension to pull it back that way so it's more in the center. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, put something down in the comments. I will try and explain it more clearly. But essentially, if you put your feeler on the left hand side of the wheel and it's rubbing there, then the general rule of thumb is that you need more tension on the other side of the wheel. So you have to, of course, look at the wheel. And if I look up at these spokes, I can see that this one in my hand here goes up and it joins the left hand side of the hub, whereas this one here goes up and it joins the right hand side. It joins the opposite side, so I need to add tension to that side to pull the rim across there. So you hear that there. Now the way you can kind of simulate this of adding tension is if I grab this spoke and another one from the right hand side and I squeeze it, so it's gone. It's because that's simulating tension on that side of the rim. God, if I just squeezed it out of my hand, bloody hell, too strong. Now what you don't want to do, especially when you begin, is you don't want to find a massive spot. I mean, you might have a massive spot on the rim, but you want to try and make the contact find the highest point of the untrueness, because if you're trying to true a bit that covers like 6, 7, 8 spokes, bloody hell, it's very difficult. You want to just find the top spot. So that's all the way. So what we have, the term we use in wheel truing is the zone of influence, or at least it's a term that I was taught years ago. So the zone of influence here, if you have all these spokes, so from here to about here, because that's where the noise is. Starts there and ends about here, right? That means that all these spokes are in the zone influencing this piece of particular untrueness. So what I'll do is I will add a little bit of tension to this side. And the way we do this, we take our spoke key, we pop it on. Now what it's useful to do, especially when you start, is to take the tire off, and you can see the nipple because it will have like a Phillips head. You'd have to take the rim tape off as well, but if you want a simple way of doing it, what I usually do is bring it up towards my face, and then you have to think about turning it clockwise, tightening it. Regular right hand tightening on, I think, all nipples. I've never come across a wheel where it was the opposite. So in this case, I need to imagine I've got a screwdriver on it like this, which means if I have my spoke tool here, I am turning it. So if I imagine the face of a clock, I'm turning it clockwise. Now you don't need a lot, just a little bit. So already taking care of some of it. And then that process there, find there, that's in there. I'll find here. So from there, all of this, I'm going to add a little bit to both of these. So I'll put my spoke wrench on, and put about a quarter turn on it because it's quite a bit out. Generally, I'd start smaller, like an 1/8 of a turn. Doesn't need to be a lot because that nipple's already quite tight. Still there. Pull that out a tiny bit. Go here and there, these two, and add a little bit to these two. Spin her up, and that's already a little bit better. Now this wheel's still got a good bit of untrueness on it, but I'm not going to stand here forever and go through the whole wheel because it will probably take me about 20-30 minutes, and I'm going to be stood here finding, isolating, adjusting. Now what I would generally say is do about 2 to 3 adjustments on one side, then do the other side. It just is good to balance out where you're putting tension and not always putting all of it on the same side. And I have said that generally speaking, you're adding tension. And the reason I say that generally speaking you're adding tension is because usually the reason that the wheel has started to pull one way is because the spokes on the other side have loosened off. It's generally, not always, but generally the case. Sometimes you can come to a spoke and you'll be like, bloody hell, that's really tight. And it might be the case that you need to take tension off of a spoke, but not usually. If you are really struggling, you can probably find a local bike co-op in your city, or you might be able to find a bike shop where they might be willing to teach you a little bit and go over it with you hands-on, because truing wheels is something that just takes a little bit of time, and it's difficult to get from a video. But hopefully that has shed some light on the situation for you, and if you have a wonky wheel, you're in a little bit of a better position to fix it yourself. Till next one, ride safe.